Saneel, how we doing?
Good, good. How are you guys?
We're doing well, man. Excited to have you on because we have heard about Ritual, have very little kind of lower level idea of what you guys do, but I think at the high level, it's very interesting. So excited to dig into that. So you're a founding member of Ritual, which is the world's sovereign chain for AI. You
Yeah,
guys build groundbreaking new architecture on a crowdsourced governance layer aimed to handle safety, funding, alignment, and model evolution. So a lot of stuff in there. So I'm wondering maybe to kick this off, just to ask how you describe Ritual to your like average crypto Twitter user that doesn't have deep knowledge on AI or
yeah,
blockchain infrastructure.
yeah. Sure as hell not that. Now that you say that, I'm like, dang, it's like really, really outdated. So maybe as a tease for your audience, we will be releasing a new site that makes this a lot clearer because let's be honest, it sounds like a bunch of buzzword slop, and I'm not blind to that fact. But um, let me give your audience a bit of a teaser of what is coming out. Um, what Ritual does is sort of a break from traditionally how infrastructure for blockchains are architected. And I'll explain it really simply. People that are familiar with the blockchain know that an L1, for example, is basically just the same computer and a bunch of nodes all around the world running mostly the same hardware agree what this computer should do, right? And when you look at the new wave, and then an L2 is basically maybe just like a side computer to that. And then when you look at the new wave of all the L1s, what we see, or L2s, is that the focus has overwhelmingly been on can we make just that one computer faster, right? And there's been all this promise of like this is going to bring a ton of net new applications and stuff like that. But when you go look at what the number one application on these so-called net new applications is, it's somehow always just another like Pripdex or Club, right? And while there is this prevailing narrative that the main product market fit for applications in crypto lies in speculation, stablecoins, and exchanges. People are sort of confused, like, oh, why aren't we getting applications with users outside of crypto? And maybe it's because building the same general purpose computation layers aren't, actually moving the design space. And so Ritual was a very, very big break for that, right? And so very simply, what Ritual does is we're now one that's built to handle computation of different types, right? So we have a base EVM layer that's like relatively fast. Everything you know about the EVM, everything you're familiar with. But Ritual also lets nodes specialize, a separate node set specialize in the compute they offer. And you can access all of that from one layer, from one smart contract. And so what I mean by this is like, Josh, you could be running, an AI model on a TE, right? Jess, you could be running an API call to some web service, right? You're running those on little compact specialized nodes on Ritual, and anyone in any smart contract on Ritual can access it. So instead of sort of just being one single computer, you have access to that computer, but you also have access to all of the computation that exists beyond that in the broader world, in the broader internet, right? And that was sort of really our goal, right? When it comes to specifically AI, what we started with was trying to figure out a way to let people access AI models on chain. I think early in late 2023 and early 2024, that was really sort of what we isolated would be valuable. That when people could go and call LMs or machine learning models, they could build new types of applications. In building sort of infrastructure for that, we ran into a lot of limitations when we were trying to work with other infrastructure platforms due to like the gas fees, the way that inference was consumed, like Base. We had a lot of usage on those chains, but ultimately we decided we needed to roll our own. And we sort of got to this. And when we were doing that, we realized that while blockchain is meant to basically be the same computer, AI models, they're different types of models that run on different hardware, and not all of them need a crazy GPU, right? Or not all of them can run on a CPU. So how do you build a blockchain that can accommodate for that, right? Different type of compute running on different types of hardware. And when we built that, we kind of had this oh shit moment, like, wait, this is a lot more powerful than that, right? Like we can have our contracts connect to the web, etc. So I want Richard to be an infra layer where we index all of the world's compute.
Got it. Okay, cool. So what? Yeah, I guess if you think about kind of the specific use cases you're excited to unlock with this, that are beyond launch pads and clobs and all this stuff that we're
Yeah,
already sick of today. Like, what are some of those use cases?
yeah, no, for sure. Like I said, Ritual can access a number of primitives. We are so focused on like things that merge AI and crypto, right? Um, I think about this in phases because at the foundation we spend a lot of time working with builders. At the end of the day, I think that if the most immediate user cohort to your chain is people who are in crypto, right? You need to build some use cases for them, and then you can start building from beyond, right? There's no deeper on Solana without pump fund. So some of the things that I'm really interested in recently are things that sit along the lines of like AI and speculation, right? Or just AI and DeFi. So there's a really cool company building on Ritual that is called Cash on Twitter. They're using their tech and um, they enable flash prediction markets. So, for example, if you're a polymarket or Kalshi, you haven't been able to figure out how to crack permissionless prediction markets, right? Let anyone or let any entity list and resolve a market. They have, right? And so they use the AI side to have models that automatically like scour social media, figure out the most relevant trends, and create markets that people can bet on a 24 to 48-hour, really fast moving short term markets that it may take Polymarket or Kalshi a lot more time to list, right? And sort of be a little bit more move at the speed of that the internet moves, right? Give people something immediately to bet on. But the other cool thing is that because Ritual sort of allows you to access not just AI models and Web2 APIs, but ZK provers and TEs all from one contract as long as someone's running it. They're also going to be using ZK TLS that let people bet directly off Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, any other social media. So it means that it moves the interface to where the distribution already is. So I think that's really, really cool. There's one company that has been sort of looking at like the AI content space, and I'm sure people know like character AI and stuff like that have gotten really, really cool. Um, I think that one of the big user behaviors that people underplay is that people assume that AI always needs to be this interactive experience. But if you actually look at the way people are using their models, they give it like 1 to 2 prompts. People don't necessarily actually like talking to an AI a lot, right? Like maybe some people as a therapist, but people like going and giving it like a few words and like being given the answers to the universe, right? So we were looking at that, and at the same time, we were looking at what sort of fictional content is really popular because I think that's always a very, very under discussed market. And it turns out that if you go, especially to regions like APAC, etc., the most popular apps are always like sort of anime style, character AI clones. But even more popular than that are like light novels and mangas, right? And that's actually an area that's been relatively untouched by AI, where everyone's been so focused on making interactive characters. No one's been focused on sort of using AI to maybe generate new stories or new manga or make them sort of dynamic as the reader goes along. And so we have this company that's doing this that has a lot of deep experience building sort of games, consumer experiences. I think that's very interesting because there's a demonstrated need, there's demonstrated business models that work. It's less more of like a crapshoot relative to other consumer, as in like you can just be a content distributor for and sort of improve upon titles you already know have users, things like that. And then there's a few other ones that I think maybe are interesting in their own right. I'll give like a teaser of them. We have like something that's like cursor for trading. We have a team of people that are working on like on-chain ETPs, things like that. So yeah, all of these sort of use these primitives of calling models natively on-chain or accessing the broader internet in some way or form. I'm very, very excited to start showcasing some of these in about a few weeks. So
Nice. Well, I mean, it feels like we're in this trough of disillusionment with crypto and AI. I mean, at the same
for
time, we're
sure.
seeing, OpenAI and all these and Google, et cetera, just continue to grow in both their valuations and their usage. And yet, I think the belief in the intersection of crypto AI seems like it's at a low. Maybe it was just overhyped. But I'm curious, like, what is the thing or what are we missing from either the tech or development within this industry that you're playing in that's going to allow you to, I guess, the space to jump into the similar level of success as we're seeing in the more web 2 type of offerings?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Um, I'm going to say something I don't think a lot of people in crypto like hearing, but crypto. So I've spent time building companies and investing in them in crypto, and probably just generally keeping a pulse on the trigger. And one of the most overarching themes is crypto always finds a path of laziest execution when it comes to a new concept. And what I mean by that is they will go look at some sort of new industry, in this case AI, and find the laziest way to get that to be a token, right? And in general, I think that's true. They will try and find the ways to get to a token. But what we see over, the long run is building real technology actually pays off, right? Like, Solana or Hyperliquid, like building good tech, good products pays off. So one, massive mind share drift, and also I think like there needs to be some adjustment on the consumer end, right? You say there was a lot of hype about crypto and AI. I think a lot of that really just went because there were some companies that were lazily tokenizing agents that didn't do jack shit, right? And we didn't even know where the agents lived, right? Or there's some protocols that are giving out incentives to a bunch of nodes around the world for performing some sort of AI task. When if you really look at what's happening with those protocols underneath, there's not any useful work going on, or it's basically just a way to resell, compute for cents on the dollar. So what needs to change is three things. One, which is impossible to ask, I'll get it out of the way, is I think people in crypto need to adjust their time horizon for what it takes to make a project do well.
Good luck.
Yeah. So I'm not. I mean, look, I trade a lot. I'm not holding my breath on that one. I get the irrationality, so I'll have to make my peace with that one. But two, I think that one, there needs to be a lot more teams in crypto that have a very high talent bar, which usually a lot of people that are very crypto native don't meet, and specifically when it comes to AI, right? And again, that's a really tough truth, but it is the case that when you look at operational excellency across industries and you look at crypto, the talent bar is abysmally low, right? And you're not going to get a lot of benefits from a crypto AI project from hiring people necessarily just within crypto unless they are very willing and intelligent and learning to learn more about AI from the ground up, right? Like even if you're hiring for a go-to-market function, your people should be mostly product people. The best go-to-market people are product people, not just BD people, right? And I think the best teams in this space will have people who are dedicated just purely to AI, right? Purely to AI and research. And so like I'm at the foundation. We have some people that cover AI, but at the labs entity, we have a number of people that are like very well respected and published researchers or engineers in that space, right? And I think we've done ICML submissions and we put out core research on AI cryptography. I think that goes a long way because that goes a long way to attracting talent outside the space, which usually have better priors on how to build a product that'll attract real users and establishing credibility. And I think I can maybe name 2 to 3 other companies that fit that description. And the last thing I think is that there's been too much of a focus, as always, on pie in the high ideas, right? If you go look at it, it's very much like, oh, here's this agent that could be useful that we've tokenized, right? Or here's this network that like could be useful that we're going to give out a bunch of incentives to get compute. And the reality is like, are any of these products people can use? Can you use any of the agents like really since AI XPT? Maybe you can, but can you like actually go use them? And would you use them every day on virtuals? Can you go and like use any application on BitTensor, right? Maybe Choots, right, which is cheap compute, but that's maybe not guaranteed to retail. And the answer is overwhelmingly no. And then you go look at applications outside in the general world in Web2 that use AI, and it's sort of like, maybe they market that they're using AI, but you use them because they're generally useful for a task, right? And the reality is that no one has spent time doing the hard thing of figuring out like when you have access to the insanely unique economic primitives on chain, and when you have access to AI primitives, what are the net new applications that could exist that couldn't exist just in AI or just in crypto? Because it turns out that task is really, really hard, takes a lot of time, and you need to have a lot of product priors on both. But when you do that, you actually get applications that people may be end users of, right? And not just like more like, hey, there's some, thing in this AI supply chain. Let me slap a network and incentives on it, right? Let me slap more tokenization on it because that's not going to get us anywhere, right? So,
yeah, I think definitely a lot of crypto AI is vaporware, and I think a lot of the stuff that isn't vaporware and is, maybe actually cool tech is often kind of a solution in search of a problem. So I'm curious what's like your core belief, or like what are the core problems that you think are actually solved by bringing AI on chain or kind of opening up the types of compute that can be on chain?
yeah. So this is an interesting question because I think there's 2 ways to break this down, one from the application side and one from the actual when you bring AI on chain side. So I'll actually start with the latter one. One, I think that there's no really good bidirectional flow between on-chain economic primitives and models today, whether that's models or agents themselves. Anyone that needs to go and jerry rig the ability for agents to do like agentic payments or for a model to go, create a new market or smart contract, right? It seems simple, but it turns out that generating your own infrastructure for that takes a lot of fucking time, right? Especially in a way that is trusted by on-chain consumers and respects the bounds. And so if you want to have stuff like, agents controlling money in an EOA or in a smart contract, right? Or even something like what we built. Well, I think we built the first on-chain agent at Ritual. We did a shit job at marketing it, considering what happened almost a year after we built that. But in December 2020, or November 2023, we built if people remember Frontech, we built like an LLM that lives in a Frontech chat room, had its own keys, and you had to convince it to buy your keys and sell others' keys, right? And like that's a fun little hack, but that's a really good example of an adversarial economic game that could be really fun to people that wouldn't be possible if your AI didn't live on chain, right? And so I think that any interplay between like real economic value and the model is made infinitely easier by the chain, right? And people have barely scratched that design surface, right? It's been mostly like, oh, maybe we'll have a crowdsourced treasury the AI quote unquote manages, right? As if it's not some dude like just sitting there clicking. But I think another very real one is that there are very talented swaths of researchers and builders around the world, right? And this does get maybe a bit more into the ideology that want to access and use models, right, from everywhere. And maybe they're not allowed to because of their country or another country. There's obviously a very real world in which a permissionless network is very valuable for making sure that the most talented people from around the world get access to the models and compute they need. And the last thing I'll say is that specifically when it comes to the model layer, the prompt layer, right? There's a lot of benefits from how different parts of the AI stack can actually be monetized. A really good example, and something I should have mentioned earlier, is prompts are a very interesting monetization layer. And so as you look at models get better and users get dumber, right? Is there a benefit to having someone who can go and explore what prompts are really going to get the most out of models? And the answer is absolutely. Today we have AI PRM and we have prompt based, right? And maybe streamer prompt. They're very focused on narrow things. I think most of AI PRM so it's like SEO prompts and prompt based is like visual content, but the core is the same, which is when you pay for these, the prompt creators have to go give up their prompts, right? So there's no sustainability. One thing you can do with Ritual and one prototype we have out is when you have the AI living sort of like in a T that's connected to the chain, right? You can also encrypt the prompt T side. You can pay on chain to have the prompt decrypted along with the user prompt without ever being revealed to someone who's buying the prompt and combine them. So prompt creators actually get a sustainable source of revenue. Does this need on chain? Absolutely no. Like I'll be the first to tell you that, right? But is it massively benefiting from having easy integration with TE primitives and global payments? Absolutely, right? Like absolutely. But when you go expand that to the surface of like things that are not, lazy, like tokenizing agents or like another data or compute network, and you go look at like, for example, open source models, chains are great places to monetize open source models. We have a paper we submitted to ICML that basically says like, if I take an open source model and fine tune it with some data and create this fine tuned model, I can actually watermark it and give provenance back to the original open source model. So we can actually like make money for these open source model creators if they're being fine tuned on it, right? And guess what? You need sort of a credible and neutral layer to post that proof and enforce it. And chain is perfect for that. So there's a million and one things, but those are sort of like, I would say the three big ones: letting AI meet programmable money, allowing monetization of like the AI stack in ways that weren't possible. I think are like the big things, and geographic decentralization. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, we're gonna have to leave it there. It sounds like you have something to announce in the next little while. Is that true, or is it just the website, or do people get to?
Oh no, I was just giving a teaser, but yeah, we will. We've been really quiet, so I'll leave it with this. We've been very very quiet. Maybe people have been reading some of my stuff. Maybe like, why is this dude writing about a bunch of random stuff? Can you just write about AI and crypto? I promise that's relevant. We will be making a lot of those announcements in the next few weeks. We're very firm believers that unlike most projects, we shouldn't talk about our shit before you have something to use. So get ready for that. But for anyone who finds the website confusing and stuff, I promise you we're updating that in the next few weeks. Just give us some time. And then we will tell you everything you've ever wanted to do, know, and more about Ritual. So.
I love it. I was reading the introduction that we had here, and I was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And a completely different conversation than I thought it might have been. Saneel, appreciate you taking the time to dive in with us here today, and look forward to seeing what you guys put out in the next couple of weeks.
For sure, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Cheers.
Peace, dude.
Thanks.